Hey guys, hello everybody. I am coming with the second installment of Systematic Bible Study. So what we're going to be covering today is we're going to be covering concordances and lexicons. Now, a concordance, you can get a concordance online for free. You can buy books, whatever you want to do with your wallpaper or electronic, however you want to go. Now, when you have your concordance, you can use it to look for verses, and you can also use it to study words. When you study words with it, you find what the original meaning was in the scriptures. So in today's world, we'll tell you that love is love. All loves are equal. The Bible does not seem to think that. The Bible is very specific about love. There are actually different kinds of love. I love my wife, I love my car, I love my house, I love my job, I love my children. All these loves are different, okay? I don't feel the same way about my car that I feel about my wife, so on and so forth. And girls, if you ever find somebody who loves their car as much as they love you or more, stay away. Now, with that said, we are going to be covering John chapter 21, we're going to start at 15 and we're going to go to 17 first. So this says, so when they had dined, Jesus, and I'm going to take the King James kind of out of it so it's a little easier to understand, but it says, so when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yeah, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me? He said to him, yeah, Lord, you know I love you. He said to him, feed my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me? Peter was grieved. Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. So why was Peter grieved? I've heard different stories. I've heard that Peter was grieved because he had to be asked 3 times. I've heard that he was asked 3 times because he denied him 3 times. This is Jesus restoring Peter back again. So, I've heard all kinds of different opinions about Peter. I've heard people say that Peter was an idiot. I've heard that, maybe, I haven't really heard this, but we could come up with, Jesus thought Peter was deaf, whatever. There's all kinds of different reasons we could come up with on why Peter was asked 3 times by the Lord. So when we look at this, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So if we use our concordance, and this is an exhaustive Strong's concordance, and it matches Strong's, or it matches the King James. It's a King James concordance and a King James Bible. So we go over here and we look up lovest. Okay, you see tuna man in the back. We look up lovest. Okay, now lovest, there's actually, we see 2 different words going on because that's the lexicon portion of the concordance. The first part, you just use it to find verses, key words. The second part, it tells you what word was used, and it's got a small number to the right-hand side. That small number on the right-hand side, we see 2 different numbers going on. We see 25 and we see 5368. So that lends a little clarity on what is happening. We see that it's not the same word. And if it's not the same word, it must be the same or a different meaning. So if we look at that with that in mind, we look at this and we see the 2 different words. So then we go to the lexicon. The lexicon basically gives kind of a brief breakdown on what the word means. And then I have an expository dictionary here which breaks it down further. So we go to 25. And 25 says agapeo. Okay, that's the word that is being used by Jesus. And it says to love in the New Testament, usually the active love of God for his son and his people. Okay, now we look at the other word, which is 5368. 5368 is phileo, to love, to have affection and regard of a very high order. So maybe that clarifies it for you, or maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't clarify it for you, you can get further into detail. You can understand a little bit more. Now, the expository dictionary that I'm using is keyed to Strong's as well. When it's keyed to Strong's, what that means is the numbers for the words match the concordance over here. Now, it's good that things are keyed the same, so that way it's kind of standardized and you know what is going on. So if we look up these two different words in an expository dictionary, and this is Vines, it looks like this. You look it up in an expository dictionary, and it says, talks about agapeo, and agapeo is basically Christian love. It talks about the way that the Lord, here's a section. Christian love has God for its primary object and expresses itself, first of all, in implicit obedience to His commandments. Self-will, that is self-pleasing, is the negation of love to God. So if we're self-pleasing, that's not the way we love God. So in essence, we're sacrificing for God. We're sacrificing ourselves. We're putting somebody else's needs before our own. So if you love your wife with a sacrificial love, it's you put her needs above yours, or your spouse, your husband. You put their needs above your needs. Okay? So when we look at phileo is never used in a command to men. Phileo is distinguished from agapeo in this, that phileo more nearly represents tender affection. So there's a big difference between a sacrificial love and a tender affection. Now, this dictionary also breaks down this section of passage that we're looking at right now. The context itself indicates that agapeo in the first two questions suggests the love that values and esteems to serve. He is phileo in Peter's answers, and the Lord's third question conveys the thought of cherishing the object above all else. So there's a big difference between the sacrificial love and cherishing. So if we take that and we put that in context and we look at the scripture again with those two words in there and increase our understanding of what's going on, we can see, and I'll make it not King James, and I'll also put in those words. So it says, verse 15, it says, "So when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than these?' He said to him, 'Yeah, Lord, you know that I love you.' So Jesus asked, 'Do you agapeo me?' Peter said, 'You know that I phileo you.' He said to him, 'Feed my lambs.' He said to him, verse 16, he said to him the second time, 'Simon, son of Jonas, do you agapeo me? Do you love me so much that you'll sacrifice for me?' He said to him, 'Yeah, Lord, you know that I phileo you, I cherish you.' He said to him, 'Feed my sheep.' He said to him the third time, 'Simon, son of Jonas, do you phileo me?' Peter was grieved. Now we see why Peter was grieved. Peter was grieved because Jesus lowered the question. He said, 'Well, if you don't agapeo me, do you phileo me?' That made Peter feel horrible. Now, he was grieved because he said to him the third time, 'Do you phileo me?' And he said to him, 'Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo you.' Jesus said, 'Feed my sheep.'" So now we can see that there's a little bit of understanding here. With these words, it increases our idea of what's going on. We see the exchange going on between Peter and Peter and Jesus. We see this change that is taking place in Peter, and he feels bad because he sees where he is with the Lord. Now, that's not the end, though. Because if we look at verse 18, it says, "Verily, verily, I say to you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and walked where you would. But you will be old, you will stretch out your hand, and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go." We see this is Jesus restoring Peter. We see Jesus saying, "You don't agapeo me now, but you will, Peter. You will." When Peter was, when he was dying, when he was killed, we see, or tradition holds, that he was crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to die the way that his master died, the way Jesus was crucified. So he wanted to die upside down. That is true conversion. That's really a change. So I hope you guys get a small idea of what's going on with a concordance and an expository dictionary and using it with scripture. You can get it online for free, e-sword.net, MySword, apps, stuff like that, or you can get paper, buy books. You can get them secondhand sometimes. Thank you for your time.